call the meeting to order and ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning. Welcome to the February 6th, 2018 County Commission meeting. I would remind you to silence your cell phones. The meeting documents are on the end of the counter next to Commissioner Bender. And if you needed a listening device, there's no one in the room. We'll get you one. So, we'll move on to routine business. Item number 1 is consider a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Madam Chair, I have an amendment. And that amendment is the liaison section of the minutes to remove "and airfare" from Commissioner Heiberger's report. The airfare is not being covered by NACO.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Do we need to
Well,
clarification?
yeah, if this is the agenda, that's the minutes.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
could've
we're
read it.
all jumping the gun here. Okay, I need a motion to approve the agenda. I had a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 2 is approve the minutes from the commission meeting of January 30th. Now. Sorry.
Do you want me to reread it? A motion to amend the liaison section of the minutes to remove "and airfare" from Commissioner Heiberger's report. The airfare is not being covered by NACO.
I will second that.
Now I'm back on path.
Great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Is that enough for the minutes? Okay. Item number 3 is bills to be paid in the amount of $296,482.40.
Move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 4 is reports. Item A is the Minnehaha County Highway Construction Project Report for January 2018, and that is on file at the auditor's office. Item number 5 is personnel actions. Item A is consider a motion to approve the routine personnel actions. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item B is recognize significant employee anniversaries for February 2018. Good morning, Carrie.
Good morning, Carrie Deaver from Human Resources. I have the following anniversaries for you. Chad Zink in the Register of Deeds and Brett Johnson in Human Services. They're both celebrating 5 years of service. Corey Peckus in the Highway celebrating 10. And then I have the following individuals celebrating 15 years of service. Sydney Dunn, Derek Lauer, Mike McGovern, and Jackie Noteboom, all from the jail. And this is probably the first time that I can recall having this type of an anniversary, but we have Jeff Lemaire at JDC celebrating 40 years with Minnehaha County.
Wow.
So our congratulations to him and
Yeah,
our gratitude. That's
yeah.
a lot of service.
That's a lot of years.
Just,
Jeff,
I think we've had one other, but when they've got 40 years, shouldn't they come and have a moment with us?
And they will.
Okay,
They'll come in September. We'll do an annual recognition then, so hopefully we'll see Jeff then.
thank you.
that is a lot of years. Item number C is record the volunteers in the county departments for January 2018.
294. We're always pushing that 300 mark, and this month we're really close.
Yeah. And item D is the 2018 annual workforce data review and HR update.
Okay.
I'll just preface this, what we had decided to have each one of the department heads come in before budget season to kind of give us an overview of what's going on in their departments instead of doing all of these presentations during the budget season. And so Carrie's the first one that is going to be presenting about her office and kind of what's going on this year.
And I'm cheating a little bit. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the county as a whole and some of the information that we look at annually versus focusing just on our office. This is data that we've been preparing since about 2011, just for our own internal purposes. We like to review some of our statistics to get an idea of trends and hopefully to anticipate some maybe upcoming needs. So I thought you might be interested in taking a look at some of this data. One of the items that we look at is just our workforce by gender, and I know you see a lot of this type of information through the affirmative action plan. Just again, trying to get a sense of whether or not there's changes a foot. And you can see for the last few years, we've been very stable in this area. We are still a predominantly male, and the reason for that comes down to the fact that we're about 40% law enforcement, and about 75% of our staff and our applicants as well, honestly, for law enforcement positions are male. Minority workforce breakdowns you see during the affirmative action plan too, but we like to look at those annually as a group overall. This can be, this is more global than really what you'll see in the affirmative action plan. During the affirmative action plan, we'll break it down by job categories. This is more of a bird's eye view, and you can see that labor force data says about 93.5% of individuals are white, and so you can look at the pink in the back there and get an idea of breakdown. County is sitting very well as far as the diversity of our organization. We're slightly ahead of what we would expect for the labor force. When we look at the job groups, as you know from looking at the affirmative action plan, we have a couple of job categories where we're fairly diverse. Workforce by age. Why do we look at this? Trying to get a sense of retirements and where we're at with staffing is one of the reasons we'll look at this. I'm going to give you a couple of breakdowns on these. I'm going to look at current shot, so where we were as of January of 2018, and then also maybe some historical data for each of these that we're looking at. So you can see here, we're about equally split. 40% of our staff are, well, slightly less than 50% are under age 40, and about 52% are over age 40. So how has that changed? Each year we look at this and we try and find a different way to represent the data that's a little bit more clear for us. But what this is really telling you, it gives you a breakdown over the past few years. But if you're looking at it globally, what it's saying is we really haven't had that much shift in the age of our workforce in categories of 60 plus, or even actually 50 plus. Where the changes are mostly in our age group of 30 to 39, where we've had a slight decrease, about 6% since 2014. And we picked that up in the group of our 21 to 29-year-olds. Why? Probably because of where those job groups are for us. We hire a lot of correctional officer staff, and they tend to be a younger group. So how long do we keep our staff? This is one that we spend a lot of time looking at each year. Some of the things that are noteworthy for me when I look at this, 15% of our staff have a year or less of service. So they were hired in 2017. When you look at total group of 2 to 3 years of service or less, we have a large portion of our staff that are fairly new to the organization. But interestingly enough, if we can get them into the 4.5 to the 6 to 10 years of service, we tend to keep them. If you look at, again, just like our anniversary list this morning, we have some people who have some fairly significant years of service. So what we want to do is look for ways that we can go ahead and push, hopefully, and get our people to stay just a little bit longer in hopes that we can keep them.
Carrie, could I ask a quick
Absolutely.
question? Do you have the staff longevity broken down by department?
I don't today in front of you, but do we track it? Yes.
Would like to see that at some point.
Sure, absolutely. All right, workforce by years of service. Again, this just gives you sort of the historical perspective. When I looked at it, the things that stuck out is, again, not a lot of shifting in people who've had 16 years of service or more, or even the 4 to 5. But we have an increase in number of people who have 2 to 3 years of service, and 11 years of service to 15 years of service, and that's being offset by the group of 6 to 10 years. Again, what sticks out to me is an increase in people who have 11 or more years of service. So you hear so much about job longevity in today's market and world and people changing positions, and we definitely see that, especially when you look at that less than 1 year of service or even 3 years of service. But I think it's interesting that we're picking up in some of those areas with the longer longevity. You hear a little bit about this one during budget. We also take a look at really where our staff at as far as where they're currently paid on our pay matrix. The red represents for you the first 4 steps in our pay matrix. The orange is the middle 6 steps, and the purple is the last 6 steps. So not surprisingly, with a staff that's fairly new overall, we have a lot of people who are at those first few steps in the range. But then again, when we're picking up and having some people with more longevity, or maybe where we needed to hire, we're seeing that about 33% of our staff are at the top 6 steps. 13% are at the maximum. And if you remember my talking last year, I told you we were anticipating that was going to be closer to 18, 19%. The reason it isn't there this year is because of turnover and because of the adjustment we made in the pay matrix in June of last year. But overall, if you look at the next chart, you'll still see that we're anticipating we're going to have, or we do have currently 18% of our staff who are really right near the end of those pay ranges. Turnover is an area we like to keep our eye on as well. We've been averaging about 12% turnover since about 2010. Why is this important to me? Clearly, the more turnover we have, that's in some ways it's a salary savings, right? Because when we have that position vacant, there's a savings. But I will argue very strongly that the cost much outweighs that. When you look at turnover cost, I think it's reasonable to expect that there's going to be a training period of at least 3 months. Some of the positions, like in the jail, we know that training period is going to be longer. So you look at an uptick of 12 to 14% or 13% and think, okay, well, that's 1 or 2%. Well, 2% in an organization our size is 11 people. 11 people with a turnover cost, even a modest amount of $30,000, you're looking at $330,000 of cost to the organization. So for me, trying to control or keep that number down is very important.
Carrie, what percentage of that 13% is out of the jail? Do you have any idea?
It's about 60%.
About 60% of the 13, okay.
So out of all the charts, this is the one that struck me the most. This gives you a breakdown of the 71 staff that we lost in 2017. How many of them had less than a year of service? 38%. So 38% of our turnover occurred for people who had less than a year of service.
Madam Chair, so Carrie, going on to what Cindy was mentioning, that 38%, would that be including correctional officers in training, for example?
Absolutely. It covers everybody across the board.
The same question for that as far as, was the majority of that percentage turnover? Was it 60% again that came
Yes.
out of the jail?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so why are they leaving? There's a variety of reasons. I'll try and go down a little bit further for the audience's perspective. It's retirement. Some are discharges. Some are outside of our control. People are moving from the community, or they think they're interested in a different career path. What we focus on is the purple column. And the purple column are things that we feel are somewhat within our control. If people are leaving for a better job opportunity or a higher rate of pay or maybe a conflict with the supervisor, these are things that we think we have the ability to impact. Looking at our statistics, I'm happy to report that conflict of supervisor came up very rarely. So most of what you're seeing in that purple column really was people saying, I have a better job opportunity or a higher rate of pay. So when you think about 38%, yep, we're bringing them in, and they know the rate of pay when they're coming in, but there's something about that first year where they're looking at it and saying, you know, not for me, not for fit, or not at this salary. So how do they rate us overall? I went back to 2010 on this just to try and get an idea. Are we really seeing a shift? And every year, we're overall, our average rating in all these categories is 4, like across the board if you were to compile them. We always rate slightly lower with the rate of pay, and we do fairly well with the pension plan that we're offering and our holidays. So you can see historically those two stay high, and the rate of pay is maybe a little bit lower. But overall, not bad ratings really when people are leaving. Recruitment, again, is valuable for us. It gives us a sense of really where we've been in our staffing. But I'm going to tell you right up front, the recruitment data can be fairly misleading. And the reason is it all depends on the type of positions we posted. With the first part, you can see the first few bars there show how many postings we had. And these are external only. They're not any internal promotional opportunities. So we did post and fill 52 positions last year. How come we had a whole bunch more numbers of new hires? The reason for that, of course, is there's a single posting that we would use to fill multiple positions, like a correctional officer. Our average number of applicants per job posting shows around 70. That looks good in comparison to past years, but I'm going to tell you again, it really depends on which positions we posted. If we're posting a clerical position, we still tend to get fairly good numbers of applicants. And you know that we've struggled in other areas. So looking back at 2017, we just posted more of those types of positions than we have in the past. And that just gives you the global on our total applicants, so you can see it's a pretty big shift for us. Any questions on the statistics side of it?
Commissioner Barth?
Carrie, when we look at people that are on the maximum step, does that change if they change jobs? If you go from being a patrol person to being a sergeant, does that change your time as being a sergeant? Does that start over, or do you keep 40 years and go right to top pay as a sergeant?
Your placement on the step is not a years of service. Instead, it is where you were hired based on your education and experience and your progression with performance through the pay scale. So you can't equate the top step with your years of service. So if somebody promotes, it depends on which pay grade they're moving. So how far apart are they? Is it just one pay grade, or are they maybe promoting 3 pay grades?
Right.
So then they're eligible for a 5 to a 10% increase. So it's rare that we have somebody who'll go from top down on one pay grade to top down on another. They're usually a little lower down in the range.
So a correctional officer that after 40 years was not the warden, it's maybe his choice not to try for those jobs. And I'm teasing. Let me also say that these statistics look very interesting to me. And, you know, I think I could see where in 2013 and we had more retention when the economy was kind of bad. And also the number of people being hired at that point that have, say, 5-year anniversaries is less than in some of the other years. We didn't hire that many people, and we didn't lose that many people.
It's a good point. During that Great Recession, our turnover rate was down to 5 and 7%. So a big change for us.
And I saw your comments in the newspaper on the same issue.
Commissioner Benega?
My question would be in relationship to your last slide about the recruitment data. With kind of a flat number of individuals that are turning over, so to speak, in the process, we still have twice as many applications as we did last year. With workforce development being such a big issue, does that mean that people are applying for other opportunities regardless of their interest, just to see what, because I would not have expected that we'd get twice as many applicants with the information that you've submitted originally.
Nope, it does seem shocking to see that amount. And for us, we go, oh, no wonder it felt so busy last year. There were quite a number of applicants for us to look through. I think there's multiple things impacting it. Do I think that people tend to keep their eye open? Yes. But I think the major reason we're seeing that spike in applicant numbers is because of the kind of positions that we posted last year. Because we had so many of the clerical positions, or our human services positions tend to bring in a large number of applicants too. So if you post a few more of those, you'll see those increases.
Okay, additional questions on that?
Okay, so this is the crux of really what I would like to talk about, or give you at least an overview, or what are we working on. Recruitment and retention are a main focus for us. Again, I think this is where we have the ability to save the county some money if we can get and keep our staff, our well-qualified, trained staff here. On the flip side, because we do have a number of postings, recruiting in unique ways is also important for us. You know that we've struggled for some of our technical or professional positions, and we know that we'll have staffing needs that are going to change how we are going to have to think about doing business within the next 2 to 3 years. So we want to come up with more innovative ways to really recruit. Wellness and insurance-related items still remain a focus. We're hoping to do some unique things with wellness during the upcoming year. We want to roll out a financial wellness program. And I talked to you during the 2018 premium setting about looking at those premium ratios continually, and we want to continue to look at some of our voluntary products. The other thing that'll be big for us, of course, in 2018 is our office will be working with Tyler Technology Conversion and getting the payroll package up and running and a lot of the position information. So that will also be a major focus for us this year and into next.
Okay. Any questions for Carrie? All right, thanks,
Okay.
Carrie.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll move on to item number 6 is applications for abatement. There are none. Item number 7 is notices and requests. There are none. Item number 8 is planning and zoning notices. There are none. Item number 9 is petition for compromise of lien, DP&O number 80210, in the amount of $2,511.96. Good morning, Melinda.
Good morning. Melinda Storley, Commission Assistant. Before you is DPNO 80210, which has a balance of $6,160.56. It represents Minnehaha County poor relief for medical fields and lien amounts recorded on behalf of Turner County Auditor for poor relief, jail fees, and public defender representation. The petitioner is requesting that the portion representing Minnehaha County poor relief file receipt 234026 in the amount of $2,511.96 be compromised in full with no payment. She's working with Turner County to have the remainder of the lien amount compromised as well. But as of yesterday, I did speak with Turner County, and a request for compromise with them has not been submitted yet. In her narrative, she explains that she's attempting to purchase a home for her mother to live in. She was not able to renew her reverse mortgage and is being forced out of her home. She's expecting to close on March 2nd on a loan estimate of $166,822. She states that she didn't recall receiving assistance from Minnehaha County for her medical bills, which were recorded on November 15, 2012, until she came to our office here in January. She expressed that she filed bankruptcy on June 2014 and believed that her medical expenses had been discharged, but again, the liens were recorded in November of 2012. Her annual income for 2017 was $27,194. She received $1,377 for tax refund. Her assets total $1,767.25, and liabilities total $25,760.92.
Questions for Melinda? Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Did you want to speak on behalf of this? You don't have to give your name, you don't have to stand up, you just have to talk loud enough we can hear you. And if you don't want to say anything, you don't have to.
I was never aware until trying to buy this house that it came to my attention on this medical bill that I did not know of it. I can tell by the signature, I was not in the state of mind when I was in the hospital to even request assistance from the county or hospital. And I'm just trying to do the right thing and what to do, but I believe Sanford, if you make me pay it again, I believe Sanford would be paid 3 times on this bill.
Okay. Commissioner Barrett?
So at this point, your mom is living in the house and you're moved in with her, is this right?
My father, before he passed away, did a reverse mortgage.
Sure.
And, yeah,
Does she have an income?
just Social Security.
A minimal Social Security?
Melinda, can you just briefly describe the collection process? I'm always surprised when people aren't notified, so to speak, of their past due or their liability to the county.
Well, anytime somebody receives assistance through our Human Services Department, they have to fill out an application. If you see, I've enclosed the application documents where she did sign back in 2012. On that application, it states that the money that is being, that they're receiving assistance with is going to turn into a lien, and that, you know, they're made aware at that point. And as far as
Just a minute, just a minute.
And as far as the collection process, honestly, I can't tell you at this time exactly how aggressive we're being in informing people at this time, or was that single moment where they applied considered notice? I'm sorry, I don't have that answer for you.
Okay, thank you, Melinda.
Thank you.
So there was $400 of partial payments have been made. Do we have dates on those? But were those to us or were those to Turner County? No, I think they're Turner County's.
If it has been paid here, we pay ourselves first.
Those are Turner County, the Turner County.
I'm just looking for it too. But were they paid to us? There's just a question of whether because if those payments had been paid in Minnehaha County and not in Turner's County.
They're,
Oh, the county number's on the side, okay.
Yeah,
County
they're
number
coded.
61. Okay, that's fine. I'm just making sure. Thank you.
So what was the answer on that? Which county?
That they were paid in Turner County, because if they
Okay.
had been paid in Minnehaha County, we would have removed the part on ours first before sending on any money. And so
Right.
that was just making sure we clarified that. So, yes, they were paid to Turner County.
So, Madam Chair, a question for
Sure.
the state's attorney. The bankruptcy doesn't discharge this, is that correct?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Commissioner, the lien was filed before the bankruptcy was filed.
Right.
So by statute 281419, the lien exists in perpetuity until death and can be processed through the decedent's estate. So because of the fact that the lien was in place before the bankruptcy was filed, then it's my recollection that that this was, the lien was filed first, and then the bankruptcy was filed, and so this lien survives. Had the
Right.
bankruptcy been filed, or excuse me, had the lien been filed after the bankruptcy, then that would have called into question the conflict with the statute that says that the lien exists in perpetuity until death.
Thank you.
These are always difficult, and so I think they're just working on reading through the agenda again, through the information. Commissioner Bender?
I'm curious why you think Sanford would have been paid multiple times on this.
I do recall giving my bankruptcy lawyer $11,000 bill plus another $8,000 bill and some multiple smaller bills. And they wrote off $44,000, which was not, I believe was more than what I had. I think there were some duplicate bills on top of it. So I know the taxpayers have to relieve for things, that situations like this, but then you guys also paid for it, and then if I have to pay for it, then Stanford would be compensated for this.
But the money you owe to us wouldn't go to Sanford, it would go to us to repay us for money that we paid for your medical bills.
The bankruptcy also included that $2,500, because I was not aware of the $2,500. So I even have my bankruptcy papers here, that they, I believe, got paid again on it, even after the county did.
But you understand, in a bankruptcy, they didn't get paid. Nobody got paid then.
I didn't have $44,000 in medical bills either.
Okay, I just was trying to make sure I wasn't missing something.
That's how I see it, I guess, but.
Okay.
Well, the fact is that we represent 180,000 other people who are owed this money, and at this point, we're actually owed $49 million by people that have received services of one kind or another. And so it's difficult for us to just dismiss a debt like this without any payment whatsoever. And I guess I would urge you to come back and make some kind of offer towards what you owe us. And so okay, I'm interested. Madam Chair, how do you want to handle this?
How much would you be willing to offer?
I need to get this house for my mother, number one. If you would allow me, because I don't have any property in my name now. Could we put the lien on this house? I have all the documentation and make payments once I receive the house, which is March 2nd. I would start making payments if you feel I have to pay this, but I need the lien to be released to get this house. And that is it would just be for temporary for a month, but, I mean, I'm in dire need, I don't have $25 sitting in my bank account.
I don't think state law will acquire it. But why don't you comment?
Madam Chair, I think the statute allows a subordination. And so if she doesn't close until, I think that it would probably, unless the commission is interested in, seeking some affirmative immediate payment to compromise, which is what I think the chair and the commissioner were seeking. Another alternative would be to, offer in discussions and continue this for a week and make the opportunity to subordinate the county's lien to the mortgage that the applicant is seeking through a lender.
So do we want to defer it 1 week so we can figure this out?
Madam Chair, I guess I would make the motion to defer action for 1 week in the hope that you could bring forward an offer of partial payment anyway on this. That's my
I think
motion.
Carol has a comment, and then do we want a second first, or? Carol has a
Commissioners,
comment?
Carol Muller, Commission Office. I would just add in that the applicant actually has 2 counties in which liens need to be satisfied in order to purchase the house. So your action will not clear up Turner County. So there's 2 counties that she hasn't applied yet to Turner County from what we understand.
I have a motion to defer to 1 week to see if we can subordinate
I'll second that motion.
this. Commissioner Benega?
I agree with it. Excuse me, I agree with the activity, but is 1 week going to be enough to file and get some sort of response from Turner County on what they're going to do? Otherwise, we're still back to step 1 and not having this settled, so to speak.
I have a question for council. Can we just do our part and not worry about what Turner County does?
Certainly, Madam Chair. I think that it is on the applicant to determine whether or not she can timely apply to Turner County and satisfy her closing date, so.
Does that satisfy your question, Commissioner Benega?
Well, ironically, there's payments been made to Turner County, but not to Minnehaha County, and I'm a little bit concerned about that. We can wait a week, and then we'll figure it out, I guess, a week from now.
All right, I have a motion and a second to defer for 1 week. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. I would ask you to work with the commission office, figure out.
And the
put it on
Turner
you.
County office.
Yeah.
Figure out.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Move on to, next we have opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak on anything that is not on the agenda today? Okay, I will go on to regular business. Item number 10 is a briefing from the Emergency Management Services Quality Assurance Report from July to December 2017 by the Ambulance Quality Assurance Director, Dr. Luther. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam
Who
Chair.
is that
Commission.
guy without a mustache?
Just realizing my iPhone X didn't recognize me this morning. That's not true. It was a trim job gone bad. But thank you for having me. I'd first like to start off with the report formatting, you may have noticed there's a little difference. I chose to do a narrative executive summary approach, and I'll get into those reasons why. But the last 2 quarters of 2017, actually the whole year, was very interesting. Indirectly or directly, as result of the Fitch study, the commission wanted to form a grassroots analysis of our quality assurance among other variables in the county. And to tell you the truth, we really got our feet moving. And there was a lot of activity in 2017 with formation of all these work groups. They tackled and have been tackling lots of different topics, ranging from recruitment and retention of our volunteer services to analyzing the applicability of fractile times that was recommended by the Fitch study, to looking at a better reporting system and a way to be consistent with best practices and industry standards. And before I forget, I'd like to recognize Lynn DeYoung for his efforts in herding these cats. These were a lot of work groups, and to be honest, since I've been doing this so long, I would have referred to Lynn DeYoung's position as the Civil Defense Director. But I don't think we can say that anymore. But that's how long that I've been involved in some variety of EMS or another. And I want to say this earnestly, that the Commission's desire to take this on has really made an impact. We've done lots of things, and whether there's any response regarding the Fitch study, part of it, all of it, or none of it, we've really gotten some headway and some steam going forward. I'm very excited about how that'll carry over into 2018. Part of these groups have recognized the need for a better reporting system. We're hoping to glean from a unified electronic EMS record, if you will, the ability to collect this information, to categorize it, and then report it out in an understandable manner for you all, as well as provide feedback to the services, which is very important. So far in that last 2 quarters, there was about 331 charts that I reviewed. I say about because there was some duplications in those charts, which is understandable. But from the respective primary service areas, these included Paramedics Plus, MedStar, Humboldt Ambulance, Del Rapids Community Ambulance, Garrett's, and Jasper. Now, this is why I did this report in a more of a narrative approach, was that first of all the reporting that was supplied to me, all of the reports rather, were in accordance with the county ordinance. So we're getting all of the pediatrics, all of the trauma, and those required calls, along with the 25% random selection. So we're going to go right to the basic life support level. And those are those typical parameters, performance indicators that I would supply in the report previously. I did do those, but of the 331 calls, I only had a couple dozen standalone BLS reports. So the county is, the majority of the calls that are out there are at the advanced life support level, meaning there's a paramedic on board and doing the narrative and the chart reporting. So that brings a whole host of different performance indicators, and I did supply, this is just a sampling of what those performance indicators would entail, as opposed to just basic life support level performance indicators. I hate the word basic life, because what they do in the first 90 seconds is really what saves people, whether it's opening an airway, stopping bleeding, or what have you. Our ability to perform other procedures at the ALS level, very, very important, but we cannot stress the criticality of the BLS involvement in the first few minutes. What I looked at in this report was adherence to ALS standards. I think I did okay with it. I found that some of the basic indicators, such as successful IV attempts, successful intubation attempts, medications. I looked at several medications, including routes of administration, dosages, and was very pleased. Now, I must also admit that I, at this point in time, have no ability to do skills validation on these paramedics. I really don't have, they're really not under my auspices, but being able to review it from the chart, I pulled 3 that I thought were maybe some aberrancy in, with what I would expect for protocols, and those follow-ups turned up nothing. There was no impact in outcomes. They were simple. You know, there are medications looks alike, sounds alike, and some of that was just in the charting. So even at the ALS level, I found nothing that I was really concerned about. Again, I always, as a safety mechanism, will reach out to the destinations and will ask either an ER manager, or I will meet once a month via REMSA, and there's representatives from all the acute care hospitals at those, and I will inquire if there's any issues that they're aware of, and I'm happy to report that there is not. So a formal chart and graph reporting mechanism is still pending. We are definitely headed towards ALS. I'm excited. I will continue to do that. I have no issue with doing that, but I think the caveat is until we land on a system where we have unified mechanisms, we'll still have to do it this way. And we're slowly, rapidly seeing less and less standalone BLS calls in the county, which is a good thing. The other thing is the Minnehaha County Sheriff's deputies. They continue to be an integral part of our system. I'm very happy to announce that we have changed some other care provisions in the county with respect to their skill sets and scope, including Narcan. I think everybody has heard of that. It's the opioid antidote. I know of at least 4 episodes that the deputies have used the Narcan, 2 of them successful. We've also changed the way an airway that we can do at the BLS level. We used to use this device called the combi tube or the King airway. Now we're able to use the iGel. We're just starting the training with that for the deputies. It's what we refer to as a supraglottic airway. It's a very good airway, very good. I would even go so far as to say it may be the airway of choice at the ALS level in the future, because it's so easy to slip in, and there are some caveats with it. We want to make sure that we're monitoring that airway very, very closely, and I'm excited about that. Also, the EMT basic deputies out there are able to do glucose monitoring in the field, which is a very critical piece of information in somebody that has an altered level of consciousness, because if we know that ahead of time, we can reverse that very easily once we do have ALS on board. If we look at just what kind of involvement that they are involved in, the deputies responded to about 70% of all the priority calls. That's our life threat calls. About half, 40% or so, for the priority 2, and those are less and less urgent types of calls, but they even respond to a third of the non-emergent calls. So they're out there assisting the ambulances where they can. So I think that that's, again, an awesome adjunct that we have to our system. Other developments for, at least from my perspective, is that I was recruited, I guess is the word, to be a liaison for the South Dakota State Board of Medical and Osteopathic Examiners to assist them in defining scopes of practice for the ALS provider. If you don't recall, years ago, EMS was under the Department of Public Safety. It was moved out to the Department of Health, where I think it should be. However, the BLS level of care and the ambulance services are under the auspices of the Office of Rural Health. So we're trying to get all of this together in a coordinated fashion so that we're talking about the same things with respect to statewide guidelines and protocols. I've also been asked by the Office of Rural Health to assist them into developing some guidelines. So it's pretty new yet. Now we're excited to be participating in that. We have the CAD program, which is the operating system for all of communications, whether it be evidence for collection for law enforcement or even us in the EMS. So I know Lynn has been a big part of us trying to get hopefully an interface between the state's reporting template and this Zerker. So that's yet to be seen. We're watching that very closely, and that'll give us an opportunity to hopefully capture analytics and dispense that out, put it into a report, and provide feedback where it's necessary. So all in all, that's kind of the last half of 2017 with respect to the quality reporting. The nuts and bolts of it, I can assure the county that the community is safe. We've got some good providers out there. And again, I applaud the Commission's recommendations to take a deep dive on this, whether it be related to the Fitch report or not. I think we've had some very good headway, and I think that we'll have a lot better reporting going forward. We'll have a better ability to integrate changes from system to system and then homogenize that, if you will. So that's my report. If anyone has any questions.
Commissioner Bender?
So I have like a really basic question that's kind of embarrassing to ask because I know if somebody's told me this before, but the difference between BLS and ALS, is that more a difference between who's on board and what their credentials are, or the type of service that the patient needs?
No, that's a good question, because you can have BLS ambulance services where that's staffed with just basic, well, I don't want to say just basic, but with EMT basic level. The designations between EMTs is there's basic and then there's paramedic. And the paramedic has a more broader scope, and they're the ones that can put airways in. They can start IVs. They're trained in administering medications based on the symptoms of the patient or the condition of the patient. So if we have an ALS unit, we are assuming that there is a paramedic on board. You can have a paramedic and a first responder, a paramedic, or an EMT basic also on board. In our system, most of this now is all becoming ALS, or advanced life support. And we do have that first response through the BLS with our sheriff's deputies out there, and then also volunteer services too that are able to respond to calls. Did I say that right, Lynn? Did I miss anything? Okay. Did I answer the question, Commissioner?
That's helpful.
Well,
Thank you.
Commissioner Barth?
This is a follow-up on Commissioner Bender's thing. So does it matter what the call is, or does it matter who's on the truck?
It would be who's on the truck.
Okay.
Because
so
we still see priority 1 calls in standalone BLS units. But just through attrition or through the changes in the services, those standalone BLS calls are becoming less and less and less. Because all the services have access to a paramedic on staff 24 or most of the day.
Commissioner Barth?
So I have a couple other questions, and I love listening to you with your vocabulary and everything. I never get to use the word criticality.
Okay.
But on the opioid success, you said that we had 4 occasions to use it and 2 were successful. Does that mean that 2 people didn't make it?
No, that means that 2 people that had altered, and this was at the sheriff's deputies.
Yes.
There's a lot more Narcan use out in the field than what we're seeing, more and more each month. But if we have an altered level of consciousness, to me, I'm a big proponent of don't forget your Narcan, because we can do intranasal. Narcan will not hurt anyone. It can only help if there is an opioid on board. And if they have no response, we don't and can't completely rule out that it's related to an opioid, but at least they would become more arousable, and you can save their airway, at least wake them up enough where they'll breathe on their own.
So I was worried that we had 2 fatalities based on that.
No, that's just it's a good question and a good thought, and I probably should have clarified. not always does it work. Yeah, they could be really deeply unconscious because of an opioid, so it takes a lot of Narcan to arouse them. But certainly it's a first line or one of the first line treatments that we do in an altered conscious individual. And sometimes there's history there that will help them move it up on the list, if you will.
Commissioner Barth?
Well, obviously, we're all aware that there's a lot of methamphetamine issue and alcohol issue in our community. We've chosen to this point not to get involved in lawsuits against the opioid manufacturers. From your perspective, has there been a big issue with opioids in our county?
I believe that there is, and those other elements that you talked about still probably reign supreme as opposed to alcohol and methamphetamine. But we are seeing a lot of opioids, surreptitious or intentional, illegal, or what have you. And it's a crisis that everybody knows about now because it's at the national level. I don't think we're probably quite as bad as some other communities, particularly if we weigh in alcohol issues and methamphetamine issues. But it's out there, and it's a big problem.
Commissioner Bennigan?
Just make a couple of comments, Dr. Luther. I do appreciate your leadership, along with Lynn's leadership, with, I guess, the strategic plan that was put together by Fitch and our support financially. But more importantly, I'm kind of excited about the fact that those 4 work groups have all been good working partners in making this whole system work, because when we started this process, there was some reluctance in pursuing this, both financially and from an operational standpoint, but every one of them has brought ownership to the process, and I think it's because your leadership and Lynn's leadership, but also those other groups have participated. And the other thing is the Sheriff's Department has also stepped up to the plate and met some of the needs of what we see as a critical problem. So thank you for doing that. I know it's part of your job, but still it took somebody to help shepherd that whole process, and it's appreciated.
No, I'm glad to be part of it. We really have made some headway. And one of the comments that you always make that I think gives the confidence in the system is that any one of these service areas, I would be comfortable with them taking care of my family.
We're very lucky to have the people we have working.
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
report. I think that's
Appreciate
it. Okay, thank you. Item number 11 is consider a motion to authorize the Planning and Zoning Department to purchase a Dodge Ram 4x4 extended cab in the amount of $25,623. Scott Anderson.
Thank you. Scott Anderson, Planning Department. As you may recall, back on December 11th, we had a auto accident. One of our vehicles was involved with an auto accident, and it was totaled at that time. Luckily, neither of the vehicle passengers or drivers were hurt, so that is a good thing. But it did result in our 2004 Ford Expedition being totaled. You may recall that we've had some action before this board to declare it surplus, to accept the insurance amount. Now the next step is I'm requesting to be authorized to purchase a vehicle off the state bid, and as Commissioner Heiberger indicated, that is a Dodge Ram half-ton, and the price of that came in at $25,423, and then there's a $200 delivery charge to that. So this is a vehicle that would be used daily. Our building inspector primarily will be using it. Just to give you an idea of his activity, last year he did about 1,600 building inspections. That averages to 5 to 6 a day. So he's out in almost every day, if not every day, doing building inspections. And so I'd be glad to answer any questions. One other thing I wanted to indicate is that we did receive $6,100 in insurance settlement from the other vehicle. That will still leave me about $19,500 short out of this year's budget. I did not anticipate having a vehicle destroyed, totaled, so I have no money in my budget. So I would be at a later time, coming in at the end of the year or early part of next year, asking for a budget supplement.
Additional questions for Scott?
Just a quick question, Scott. Why did you choose a pickup versus a standard sedan or whatever? Because obviously the operational cost is different.
It is different, and the primary reason is that most of the time, or a lot of the time, the building inspector is going out to sites where they are in the process of constructing a new house. There's no driveways, and the terrain is, pretty tore up. It's pretty rugged, and so a sedan, like an Impala or one of the other state bid vehicles, I don't think it's going to traverse that very well. So that's why we need a four-wheel drive vehicle, and surprisingly, these pickups are only about $5,000 to $6,000 more than the Impalas. They come in at about $19,000, so it's not significantly a lot, but a little bit more.
It's not about buying it, it's about operating it, which is usually where the rubber hits the road, literally, I guess. But anyway,
Yeah.
thanks for the explanation.
Sure.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second? A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
you.
Thank you, Scott. Item number 12 is consider a resolution to declare certain mobile home distress warrants for unpaid property taxes as uncollectible.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here today. It's an annual thing, and we're requesting you pass a resolution to declare certain mobile home distress warrants for unpaid property taxes as uncollectible. The sheriff has served these people, and I think it is Lance Matson who actually did this and made the recommendations that as you can see, most of them have been destroyed. So,
I have
Um,
one question. Is there anyone else that has a question?
I have comment, but go ahead with the question.
I was
I
gonna-
just, my question, did you have excuse me?
Go ahead.
My question is, if the city of the Sioux Falls purchased some of these homes, why didn't they pay the back taxes on them? Is that not a smart question? If they purchased the home, why didn't they pay the taxes on them before they destroyed them?
Amy?
We need Amy to come.
Amy,
the
you need to
mic-
come up and identify yourself, because that doesn't make any sense to me.
Amy West, Assistant
Yeah.
Treasurer. They did in some instances pay, but not in all. And most of these were put up for auction and no bid.
Okay, but we have for sure one on here that was purchased by the city of Sioux Falls, $143.01. That I would think if they were the purchaser, they should pay the taxes unless there's some law against them not paying it.
I don't think they're responsible for the taxes if they buy it. They're exempt, so I'm guessing
they
they
are,
they don't have to pay for it.
Okay. Did you have a question?
I'm sorry.
Because I interrupted you earlier.
Oh, no. You asked something that I was gonna ask about.
I just have a comment. We get these every year, obviously, and, at some point they changed the law to treat them like actual real estate homes. And if we treated automobiles, note the word mobile in automobiles, the same way, then you buy your car in 2018 and you pay the tax in 2019, as opposed to paying it within 30 days and getting a license plate. So it's not a surprise that these things disappear. At the same time, you're not allowed to move a trailer without getting a permit. So exactly how these things disappear, clearly in violation of the law, is a matter of confusion for me. And I think our legislature was in error to treat these the same as actual stick-built real estate when they in fact are mobile.
Additional comments?
The other question I have, and most of these, when I look at the addresses, are what I recognize as mobile home courts. But there's a couple on there that are not mobile home courts. In fact, they're in some nicer parts of the community. Is that just who purchased to have the trailer removed? Or do you have the details of that by chance?
I don't think we do.
Okay. Because the one on Donahue Drive and the other one on Falcon are fairly significant parts of the community. Could we get that answered?
We could try, but I don't know that they know.
Okay, if you can't find that out, that's questionable.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Barrett?
I do have one more comment. I remember a few years back when our treasurer had a citizen complaining that she couldn't afford to pay her tax on her mobile home, and it was like $35. And I went out to that location, and it was, to use a word Democrats have used incorrectly, it was deplorable. I mean, this person did not have running water, was using their neighbor's facilities. Their landlord was not charging them rent. It was bad. And, you know, you look at some of these here. Here's one on 201 East Court Street, $20. What kind of property is this where it's allowed for human habitation for $20 tax? It's terrible.
Is there a motion?
A motion to approve the uncollectibles.
Is there a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Pam.
If possible, I'd like to learn a little bit more about
We'll
those
try
two.
to find out more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 13 is a brief on the status of the proposed traffic signal installation at the intersection of 6 Mile Road and Rice Street. DJ Boothie, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. DJ Boothie, Highway Superintendent. My intention today is just to give you a briefing on a proposed project that we had in our 2018 budget. We're pulling a project off of the plan, and because it's a pretty significant change to our transportation plan and our 2018 budget, I wanted to keep the commission informed on that. And also Commissioner Bender requested a briefing on this as well. So a quick background, in 2016, the Highway Department commissioned a study with an engineering consultant to do a traffic analysis of I think 10 or 11 different intersections within the county. As part of that, this intersection was identified as an intersection that needed to be improved with a signal installation. And it met several different warrants for the installation of a traffic signal. In 2017, that study was completed and submitted to both the Highway Department and also presented to the County Commission by the consultant. And so therefore, we budgeted for 2018 a traffic installation or traffic signal installation. That was the lowest cost improvement for the warrants being met. We also looked at different options such as a roundabout. Due to the Veterans Parkway construction project being completed in 2017, the portion that was completed in 2017, which went from Madison Street up to Rice Holly, the traffic patterns changed pretty significantly out there. That certainly was not unexpected. We knew that traffic patterns would be changing significantly out there. It's difficult to predict the driver behavior when something like that happens. This isn't something that the Sioux Falls region deals with on a pretty regular basis. And so we knew that traffic patterns would be changing, but we wanted to make sure that budgeted dollars were available in 2018 in case we still needed to do the traffic signal installation. We've taken several counts in multiple different locations out there, including turning counts right at the intersection, which was the primary warrant for the installation to begin with. And the amount of cars that are entering this intersection and turning are really significantly lower, I think 40% of what they had been before. And then that's predicted to decrease further when the remaining portion of Veterans Parkway opens up from Rice Holly up to I-90. So upon meeting with 2 independent traffic engineers after receiving updated traffic counts, we determined that it is best interest to forego the 2018 installation of the traffic signal, and the intersection will be continued to be monitored annually to determine if improvements are required in the future. And so that's the briefing on the decision that was made, why it was made, and I'd entertain any questions or comments that the commission has.
Questions? Commissioner Bender?
I think, thanks for coming. This is right out by where my house is, and so a lot of my neighbors were pretty interested in it, and it has been dramatic to see the traffic patterns change with the open of Arrowhead Parkway. So it's good to know that there aren't going to be, I had people that were concerned that there were going to be multiple lights that they were going to have to stack through, and so it's good. It's very interesting to see how if you build a road, they will come. So thank you.
Commissioner Barth?
I did get an email from a citizen over in Hartford worried that our county was going to use more roundabouts, and they made the claim that they're taking them out east. Is that true? I mean, have they fallen out of fashion?
So there's two different terminologies that civil engineers use. There's roundabouts and there's traffic circles. In traffic circles, when you are inside the circle, you yield to get out, and in roundabouts, you yield to get into the circle, so to speak. So traffic circles are not nearly as safe and efficient from a traffic standpoint as a roundabout is, and so traffic circles are being taken out pretty systematically in certain areas. Oftentimes they're replaced with roundabouts, and so if that doesn't confuse you more, but generally speaking, roundabouts are certainly not being taken out. They're going to be installed more and more and more throughout the entire United States, I'm sure. The reduction in fatalities, the increase in safety that they provide, and the efficiency that they move traffic through an intersection are huge benefits that a lot of different traffic or municipal agencies, state agencies, and county agencies are all taking advantage of.
Also called traffic calming devices.
They are a method of traffic calming, sir.
Yeah. One question is not related really to this other than roundabouts. It is, I did get a question from a citizen this last week on a roundabout that's going to go in on Highway 17 and Highway 42. I realize that is not your highway, but do you know anything about that? And 17 and 42 is...
it's now County Highway 145
okay.
and State Highway 42, right? I've heard about it. I'm aware of it.
It's by it's the road that goes to Lenox, and I believe, and the
Road that goes to Hartford.
And the road that goes to Hartford.
West 12th Street.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm aware of it. The state plans on installing a roundabout there and potentially multiple roundabouts along that corridor out to Hartford.
Is it more to slow traffic?
It's in lieu of stop signs or traffic signals. It slows traffic down as a traffic calming measure. And then it also is a huge reduction in severe crashes and serious crashes that cause injuries.
Okay. All right.
And that, I don't know about that intersection specifically, but I know there's some other intersections along that corridor that there's been some fatalities.
Yes.
And serious accidents. So I'm sure that's why the state is looking at it.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the briefing. I think that's
Thank you.
all our questions. Item number 14 is consider a resolution to support townships in amending state law to allow township property tax levy authority and expenditure for emergency management services, House Bill number 1076. Craig, good morning.
Morning, Madam Chair. This is a resolution, as you said, to support Representative Dan Allers in his efforts to get a bill passed at the state legislature that would provide the authority for township governments to levy taxes and expenses in support of emergency medical response services. And after the townships had visited with their attorneys, it was determined that state statute didn't allow townships to levy taxes or have expenses for rural ambulance delivery, except in the circumstances of contracting. So that's what this bill would address. And our state's attorney, I have a question for you. In the past, when we've done resolutions, in some cases, we need to read the entire resolution. Would that be needed in this case?
How long is it?
It's about half a page.
I think that it's always best, I think, to read a resolution out loud
Okay.
for the benefit of the audience.
I will go ahead and do that. This resolution is supporting townships and amending state law to allow township property tax levy authority and expenditures for emergency medical services, whereas rural emergency medical response is necessary to save lives, and whereas state statute does not currently list emergency medical services as allowed expenses within township levy authority, except in the circumstance of contracting. Therefore, be it resolved by the Minnehaha County Commission that South Dakota codified law be amended during the 2018 legislative session to provide townships with the optional authority to levy taxes for emergency medical response, emergency medical service expenses. And supporting criteria for the resolution indicates that the SDCL 10-12-28.1 does not include expenses for emergency medical response services in the list of allowable expenses and levy authority except in a contract scenario. So contracting for emergency medical response requires time, energy, and effort and money for compliance. So House Bill 1076 will offer townships a more cost-effective option to support volunteer emergency medical response services. And for township or for county and local townships that choose to support emergency medical response services, House Bill 1076 is beneficial for local governmental units to have a financial stake in service deliveries. So this would apply to all counties and townships across South Dakota, and it would allow those townships that so desire to support such a service to have that optional authority to implement that. And to give you a quick update on where this bill is at in the legislature, I've been working with Emergency Management Director Linda Young, and we've been supporting this together. The most recent action is that it passed the House in a vote of 66 to 1 for a vote. So the action that's being requested is to approve the resolution for the commission to endorse this bill.
Commissioner Vandegan.
I would make a motion to approve the recommendation.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Craig. Next is the legislative update, so you can stay right where you are.
Good morning, Craig Dewey, Commission Office. You've seen this legislative update here. There are some bills that continue to work their way through the legislative process. Actually, at the end of last week, the legislature had the final deadline for bills to be submitted by lawmakers as well as committees, so we're dealing with a much more defined universe of what we're looking at for bills. So at last count, there were about 500 bills that were submitted between the State House and the State Senate, so it'll be a reasonably busy session. It can range anywhere from 400 bills on the low side all the way up to over 700 in some years when it's been busier. So one of the bills that the commission passed a resolution in support of is Senate Bill 86 to sell surplus property through a broker and dealing with appraisal requirements. So an update for you from last week is that bill was assigned to House State Affairs and is awaiting a committee hearing date. Given when crossover day is in the legislature, crossover day is when a bill must pass the Chamber of Origin. That is closer to the end of February. We've already passed the Chamber of Origin, and with the volume of bills, I don't anticipate that we'll have a hearing on this bill until more towards the end of February or possibly beginning of March. So Commission Office, including myself, is continuing to work on this bill in contacting legislators, but as far as official action, it'll still be a few weeks before that likely comes up. A few other bills that I think are worth highlighting as well, since I'm not going to cover the entire list in the memo for you, but House Bill 1142 dealt with revising publication requirements. If local governmental units met certain conditions, that bill ended up to allow publication to be made on a designated website. That bill ended up being killed in committee by a 12 to 1 vote. So that bill is dead unless there would be a vote to reconsider. House Bill 1229 it deals with revising the penalty for a violation of the seatbelt law. It increases the offense to a Class 2 misdemeanor, which I found out in discussing this with the public defender, would entitle the accused to a public defender, which could potentially increase costs in that area. Since this memo was drafted, the bill has passed out of committee and is awaiting a full floor vote in the House. So please keep that on your radar. Another bill that you just took action on, House Bill 1076, as I indicated, that passed the House in a 66 to 1 vote. So I think, again, a similar scenario could take place as Senate Bill 86, since it crossed over from the Chamber of Origin. We may have to wait a few weeks until 1076 would receive a committee hearing in the Senate. House Bill 1157 would allow certain alcohol manufacturers and wholesalers to enter into sponsorship agreements with certain alcohol retail licensees. The impact of this bill would be to allow the state, or rather Sioux Empire Fair, to receive some sponsorship deals from alcohol licensees. And that was passed in House Judiciary, but was amended. So the House opted with the amendment to defer action on that. So the House, after a bill gets amended, generally, especially if it's early in the session, lawmakers will want to study what the amendment is, so they will defer action on the full floor to have a better understanding of what that bill would do when they would take action on it. And then the last two bills that I would bring up would be bills that just dropped recently, close to the end of the deadline. One is House Bill 1294, which would increase the tax on certain alcoholic beverages and distribute the revenue of 5 cents per drink, with 100% of those revenues going to the county. The other bill that is impacting taxes related to alcohol is House Bill 1308, and that would provide for an excise tax on alcoholic beverage sales and distribute the revenue with 50% going to the state, 25% going to municipalities, and 25% going to counties, and that would amount to 25 cents per drink. And those bills have been assigned to committee and are awaiting a committee hearing. If you do have any other questions about bills included in this memo or other bills that are not included in this memo, I'd be happy to provide you an update.
Any questions on bills?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Barry?
I would sure like us to come out in favor of 1294 and 1308. I think that they clearly are in the public interest and clearly in our interest as a county. And, you know, perhaps next week we could take some consideration of that, but I'm excited that finally there is an opportunity, and I would point out that this was not brought forward by the county organization, but by a nonprofit of whom I have some relation with. And we've gotten some great support there. Representative Bruner is a prime. Mark Mickelson has signed off on both of them. Senator Klum, I've got to thank him. He's a senator that took it upon himself. And it just seems to me that anyone that's aware of the situation that we have, where we're using property tax to pick up the costs related to alcohol abuse instead of alcohol tax to cover alcohol abuse, anyone that's, you know, semi-conscious at this moment should support this.
Commissioner Barth had called me or talked to me this last week about putting on a resolution, and I wanted him to bring it forward at this meeting and see if you were amenable to having the resolutions put on next week's commission meeting to support these two bills. I have read them, and I've also talked to Matt Walsh, who has been spearheading all this, and he does seem to think that he has quite a bit of support going forward for both of these bills.
I'd certainly be in favor of that.
I would.
So direct staff to put together resolutions in support of those for us to discuss next week on our agenda.
Happy to.
Okay.
Craig, is there an estimate on the revenue
There is.
projections that are made for both of those bills?
There are some estimates. I haven't seen those, but I would be happy to look after that and provide you that information.
Thank you.
I have seen them. I'm not going to quote them here, but it's a lot. I would say it was more than $10 million. So,
Really?
yeah. So I have seen them. They were impressive. So. Okay. If there are no more questions on legislative updates, I would go to the Minnehaha County Commission liaison reports. If there are no reports, Commissioner Barry?
I just would say that in planning, clearly next, well, we've got this issue on Hope House scheduled coming up on the 20th, and I've been getting a lot of contacts on both sides on this issue. Probably I've not had this many contacts since we okayed a barn for the Swanson family north of Crooks, but I probably have had 12 contacts from different people on this, both sides.
I would just ask for direction on, I have had contacts only from the petitioners that are trying to move this project forward. have asked for time, commissioner time, and I'm just wondering, I know there was some difficulty with the law a few years ago, and so what am I allowed to do as far as meeting with outside people? I'm allowed to meet with them as long as I disclose?
Maybe, Madam Chair, we could have some further conversations about that?
Okay. I think all the commission could use some direction and make sure that we're doing this right, because I have had quite a few, but mine have all been in support of the project. I haven't had anyone that's been against the project at this point.
I've
so.
had both.
Okay, any other liaison reports? I look for a motion to adjourn. There is no exec session today.
So moved.
I missed a page, sorry.
I was gonna
New
say that.
business, I'm sorry, I missed a
thought,
page.
there was a mistake on the agenda.
I missed a page, new business. Is there any new business? Is there any old business?
Madam
Okay.
Chair, I bring
Commissioner
up an
Brett.
item on old business, which
Okay.
is that the Brower subdivision in Hartford, which has long been a muddy sore spot, apparently their taxes have gone up to cover their road district, and I've gotten some complaints by people that, what's going on. I didn't go to the meeting, but now my taxes have gone up.
Well, it'd be nice to see a road out there. So, now I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned. No exec session, which is nice. Jean, we have some letters to write, because I didn't do this one.